A single person seeing a shadow in an empty hallway is easy to dismiss as a trick of the eye. But when hundreds of independent visitors, skeptics, and researchers walk out of the same building reporting identical experiences, the pattern becomes a statistical anomaly. For decades, groups with no connection to one another have investigated Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. They aren't sharing stories beforehand. They are observing a consistent, reproducible pattern of sightings that has remained unchanged for years. These witnesses repeatedly encounter specific figures. In the hallways, multiple groups report a small boy named Timmy interacting with rubber balls. On the fourth floor, documented reports describe a dark, solid mass clinging to the walls and ceilings. Investigators call it the creeper, and the descriptions are uniform across decades of independent sightings. This chart maps the sheer density of those reports. The Atlantic Paranormal Society documented over 300 events across the facility's floor plan. When you overlay their electromagnetic or EMF readings, the massive energy spikes correlate perfectly with the exact locations of the visual reports. Instruments are measuring physical energy in empty rooms where hundreds of people see the same things. It raises a specific question. What historical event carries enough weight to leave an imprint that machines can still read nearly a century later? In the early 1900s, an incurable disease known as the White Plague swept the United States. Louisville, Kentucky suffered the highest tuberculosis mortality rate in the entire country, with the illness spreading rapidly through the civilian population. The city built Waverly Hills Sanatorium in 1926 as a highly advanced quarantine facility. It sat on a high, windswept hill on the edge of the city, using long, open-air wards and massive windows to isolate the sick from the healthy population. Medical treatments here were often brutal and experimental. Doctors attempted to force oxygen into failing lungs by implanting balloons or surgically removing ribs to allow the chest cavity to expand. For the thousands admitted here, these invasive surgeries offered the only hope of survival. They also utilized intense phototherapy. Patients, including young children, were arranged in circles and exposed to high-powered ultraviolet light. Staff flooded their exposed skin and lungs with artificial radiation in an attempt to kill the bacteria within. The human toll was absolute. Families were fractured as soon as a member was admitted. Many children were placed in these narrow wooden beds and never saw their parents or their homes again. Over several decades, the concrete and brick of Waverly Hills became a vessel for an immense concentration of physical agony and isolation. The building functioned as a container for inescapable, prolonged suffering. Modern activity is most intense in specific hotspots. On the fifth floor, at the end of a long corridor, sits room 502. Independent investigators consistently flag this room as the most intense psychological location in the entire building. Two severe tragedies are tied to this room. In 1928, a nurse assigned to the floor discovered she was pregnant and hanged herself inside. 4 years later, another nurse reportedly plunged to her death from the room's window. Visitors in room 502 describe identical sensations, a suffocating physical weight, and the feeling of being pushed toward the window. Witnesses outside the building frequently report seeing lights burning inside the room, despite the facility having no functioning electricity for decades. The administration also had to manage a massive death toll, conservatively estimated at 8,000 people. Doctors believed that seeing the volume of corpses leaving would destroy the morale of surviving patients, so the staff was ordered to hide the dead. They engineered a 500-foot motorized underground tunnel known as the body chute. This concrete corridor ran from the basement to the bottom of the hill, allowing staff to secretly lower bodies to waiting trains out of sight of the living patients. This tunnel, built to transport the dead, remains a primary site for activity. Investigators capture electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, in the dark. They report sudden, freezing cold spots and a specific recurring sensation that the concrete walls are actively breathing. The facility's history of secret mass death and localized trauma created the exact hotspots where scientific equipment continues to register anomalies today. The overlapping reports and matching EMF spikes suggest a specific mechanism. Extreme mass trauma may record itself into a physical space. Waverly Hills was built as a beacon of hope. For the patients, the belief that they would recover was a necessary lie, a vital psychological tool required to endure the reality of their isolation. When the sanatorium closed in 1961, the people left, but the environment retained the memories of what happened there. Over decades, the lines between the physical structure and the thousands of lives that ended within it have blurred. Whether these events are paranormal or psychological, the consistency of the reports is undeniable. For decades, the environment has continued to trigger identical reactions and measurable energy spikes in independent observers. Hundreds of scientists and skeptics have walked through those doors, leaving with stories they cannot explain. Their collective data suggests that whatever Waverly Hills absorbed during those decades of suffering is still waiting inside.